Hello and welcome to Beyond the Green Room, the weekly brunch time chat show of all things theater. And I'm David Edwards, I'm your host. And today I have three incredibly talented gentlemen who are old friends of mine, and they're old friends of each other, which is very exciting. And I think they can't wait to get in the room to talk to us and talk to each other. And one of them should be very familiar with that music that we just heard. That is a little snippet from the cast recording of Legs Diamond, a show in which he appeared on Broadway. The last theatrical inhabitant of the Mark Hellinger Theater. And I think the last time he performed on a Broadway stage, but he's performed on Broadway stages many, many times and has now been directing and choreographing and writing and producing his own work. Please welcome my friend, Jonathan Cerullo.
Hi. Oh my gosh. When you were playing that music, I was like, wait a second, I've heard this music before. And I realized when I heard that Machine Guns, I was like, oh my God, that's Legs Diamond. So yeah, surprise. Yeah, that was a snippet of the ballet in the second act.
And I can imagine you dancing your heart out in that.
Oh boy, that was Alan Johnson choreographed the show, and he did a masterful job. He was nominated for a Tony Award too on it. Yeah, that was incredible. And I'm still very close with all of that cast. We just had a reunion not too long ago. 2 years ago, we celebrated our 34th reunion, I think.
Oh my gosh, it can't be. Well,
it was
here. That's great to hear. And we're going to hear a lot about some other reunions that you're planning coming up.
Yes,
Let me bring in the rest of my guests. I know you're dying to see them.
I am. I haven't seen these guys. God.
Well, you're going to spend an hour and a half with them now, at very least. Yeah. So please welcome another old friend of mine who has been the artistic director of the Fifth Avenue Theater and the Ordway, and a resume too long to get into right here. Please welcome James A. Rocco.
Hi.
An equally theatrical background we have Schubert Alley, and we have an apartment that was featured in the New York Times, but we'll have Jonathan tell us about that soon. And my last guest, last but certainly not least, the gentleman I've worked with many times, and he is not only a director and a choreographer, but a writer, and he's got a lot of projects that he's going to tell us about today. Please welcome my friend DJ Salisbury. Oh my gosh!
I'll grab you all. I want to grab you.
See, I have three director choreogrophers on at once.
I mean, my gosh,
this is unprecedented. I know we're gonna need a lot of time. I could probably spend 90 minutes with each one of you. But this is the game that we play every time we get the show started, just to open up the conversation. And it may be the last time I get to say anything about me. But I always ask the question, it's 1 degree of David Edwards. Where did we meet? How did we first, my idea may not be the same as yours, but it always brings up some interesting chat. Jonathan, you have to go first, because I think it's very obvious to us both.
So there was this apartment on the first floor of my building, which had musical theater music playing nonstop, and I'm like, who is in that apartment? And why are they playing this musical theater? And then, of course, it was Tony and David, who was my neighbor for, I don't know how exactly, quite a number of years, if I'm not mistaken. And that was actually the first time that we connected. And I was like, anybody who plays musical theater, you're good.
You were a great neighbor and a great,
thank you.
we never, I don't think we ever got to work together. We almost did.
Have not. Yes, we almost did, but we have not actually physically worked together, which we have to correct.
We'll have to remedy that. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh my God, it's so good to see these boys. Oh my God, DJ, Jamie.
While Jonathan composes himself.
Yeah, sorry, I'm starving for all that going on.
For community.
No, that's what we like to hear. This this wonderful format has been bringing us together, and everybody feels the same way. I run out of this apartment forgetting that we even have a pandemic on after my show on Sunday, which is really, really great, So, all right, Jamie, how did we first meet?
Well, we were both child actors.
That's right.
And I actually remember auditioning for the Rothschild, which you got. And so I've known you since then.
I'm sorry, I did not know that. I see. This is a different story than I would have remembered. Yeah.
So I even think it was at the Lunfontaine Theater, and it was backstage. And I don't remember. I probably sang "Consider Yourself," and you probably did too.
Did, yes.
And but I remember then, but of course we didn't really actually work together until a few years later, when you played Scrooge in a show called The Country Christmas Carol that I commissioned.
Which
you were great.
The first of many Scrooges, and probably the most unique, because it was all an original score with country western kind of flair.
By Albert Evans and Ron Kalin.
Yes.
You were great. You were great.
Well, and I was in to replace someone who couldn't make it, and but because I had done Man of La Mancha for them, they pulled me in, and I was so lucky to meet.
I think it was McIntyre Dixon who at the last minute had to drop out. And they said David, and I was like, the last time I saw him, he was 10 years old, but I guess he could play Scrooge. So.
Well, I was still a little young then, but now I've aged into it. Let's put it this way. And it was at Westchester Broadway where I have done Scrooge in that version, another musical version twice, once that was set in a Sleepy Hollow Christmas Carol. So you actually opened up a whole new branch of my career for me. So,
okay.
I'm the go-to Scrooge. Yeah. and especially this year where money is tight, I'm going to be Scrooge to all of you. So anyway, DJ, before we go any further, I haven't forgotten about you.
No, of course. Your reputation preceded you. I'd heard about you, I think, through David Armstrong. So your reputation, I knew of your reputation as a fabulous baritone, and you came and auditioned for Anything Goes. And if I'm not mistaken, it may have been, at least in that part of your career, one of the first Waka Waka comic roles. You were Moonface Martin for me. So you were Public Enemy number 13. So that's how we met. And then, interestingly, went from Public Enemy number 13 to Notorious Female Impersonator in La Cage. And we had such a great time in La Cage, didn't we?
Yes, we did. I remember that production very fondly. I have done it several times. It was before that, actually at Westchester Broadway, Jamie, I did my first La Cage. I think I was 27, so it was ridiculous that my son was the same age as I was. But it was great, and our production was, I think, my favorite of all.
Oh, that's nice. It was a beautiful cast and a beautiful production. The good news was, in that particular instance at Gateway Playhouse, we got to design it from the ground up, which is, in summer stock and regional theater, that had been rare to have an original set, original costume. So it was really pretty great.
Well, it was very special to me too, and I keep thinking, I'll go back to it again. We almost did a La Mancha together too, which is another one of my perennials. But
yes, I think you would come to Anything Goes from a La Mancha. I think.
Yeah, I think we there was a point where it was either doing a La Mancha with you for my umpteenth time, or I was going to go and do a second or third King Arthur somewhere, and for some reason that's what I did. But no regrets.
No.
We have something in common. We more recently, I directed a production of La Mancha that I was with a gentleman you've worked with, David Pitzinger.
David.
Yes, and we had previously done a South Pacific that I think you did with him, and David and I became great friends.
He's a good man.
Well, he had done South Pacific many times, and I kind of said, well, we're gonna go back to square one, and bless his heart, he said it was his favorite South Pacific.
That's nice to hear.
He spoke so fondly of you too. So, and I know you did there's a project that you've been working on for some time, The Man Who Would Be King.
Yes.
And he did some work on that with you?
He did. He did one of the demos, the most recently created song. He did the demo for that. And it's beautiful. His voice is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And he's a lovely man inside and out, yes. And his wife was actually in our South Pacific too. She's an opera singer, but she got her equity card doing it. And she took to acting like a duck to water. So now, Jamie, tell me more about you. You and I were child actors around the same time. Was your journey always to be a performer, or were you always heading towards being a director, choreographer, creator of theater?
I wanted to be a rock star. That's what I wanted to do. And that was my plan. I mean, I was a child actor, mostly because I sang. And of course, that went along with, you took dancing lessons from Charlie Lowe and Jerry Ames and Phil Black. And you learned the Broadway ropes. And the next thing you know, you're working in the theater. And I figured that would be fine. I thought I'd actually be in music. But music just kept throwing me back into the theater. And I was like directing, but I thought that might be something I might dabble in. I never in a million years thought that's what I would do full time. And then at about 30 years old, it was like a window opened up and I just started directing like crazy and discovered I loved it. I tell this story often. Robert Johansson called me and said, I want you to direct Oklahoma. And I was like, you've got the wrong number. I don't do that. And he was like, why? And I was like, I don't get those shows. And he said, I want you to bring your sensibility to it. Read it. Call me in a week. And I read it. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. This is Oscar Hammerstein being political. GJ, I think you were in it.
No, it wasn't. But I think I may have seen it.
Okay. I swear I thought you were in it. You weren't like Slim or something like that. Anyway, I said, this is a political satire about the Republicans and the Democrats. I think I could do something with this, but I don't think I can do what anybody else did. I'm going to bring my own interpretation to it. And he said, okay. He hooked me up with Sharon Halley, who is a genius and really helped me. And the next thing I knew, I was the director. Second show I did was The Wizard of Oz, and that was like directing baptism by fire. Dogs, children, tornadoes. And my life changed.
What about you, Jonathan? You started definitely as a performer. Was this part of a master plan, or? Well,
I have to say it's interesting that you're talking about La Mancha, and I see behind you this beautiful. I think it's a painting or some creation of Quixote. Am I wrong?
Our dining room is filled with Don Quixote. But
yeah, and it's interesting. It's interesting because I'm always curious as to asking other artists, when did they know that they couldn't turn back? And for me, it was when my family went to the newly built Vivian Beaumont Theater and saw the then transferred production of Richard Kiley, Robert Brownsville, and Joan Diener in La Mancha. And I do not remember a darn thing until during Impossible Dream, the Vivian Beaumont was lit by what I now know is a mirrored ball, but this star field just encased that theater. And I was like, what? How did that happen? And I turned to my father and grabbed his arm to ask him. And it was the first time I saw my father crying. And I looked back at that stage and I said, can that do that? And I was like, boom. And ever since that moment, I have always, it's just been part of what do they say? The theater bug bites you at that point in time. And that's when that happened. I think I go back a little further, though, into when I wanted to be a director or understand that. My grandmother had a marionette show for a birthday party that was in our backyard. And I was so curious how those marionettes were being worked. I got out of my chair and I went and I pulled the curtain back to look at these people who were now controlling these marionettes. And there must have been something in that moment that grabbed me. Because I went to undergraduate to get my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Directing from Emerson College. But my entree into the business was as a dancer. So I realized that was a way I could watch the folks working. And when I did Legs Diamond, actually, I remember I went into rehearsal. I wasn't called into rehearsal. And our stage manager said, you're not on the call sheet today. I said, oh, I kind of am, because I really want to see how they're putting that scene together. I really want to. He goes, stay. So that was it. I just learned that. And then, of course, when my dear colleague Pat Birch called me to say, she actually said, first I didn't think it was her. And she says, I'm pulling you out of the chorus. I said, okay. She said, I need an assistant. And it was 13 years of working with Pat, the master of all time in my book. And he comes into the rehearsal with me every time I go into rehearsal. So, yeah, so it's in my DNA for a while. So there you go.
It's important. A lot of the people that watch our show are young people who are just starting out in the business. And this story that we seem to hear over and over, and that we recommend to them, is see where it takes you. Don't ever say no to an opportunity, because you don't know. I didn't start out wanting to direct. I wanted to act, and I started to get work because I sang, so most of my resume early on was musical theater, and it took me a long, hard time to forge a resume that was 50-50 with non-musical. And my journey towards directing, present company accepted in every 150 ways. But I started to work with a lot of directors who I thought, I don't know that this guy is or this lady is communicating in an actorly way to people. So I felt I had something to offer, and a different approach to the musicals I was doing, and also what I learned in musical theater to take with me into straight plays. And it gave me a tremendous amount of joy. And people then came to me and said, why don't you X, Y, Z? So what about you, DJ? I mean, you were a performer as well. Everyone here was and is, or in Jamie's, I know you're still performing. Yeah. What about you, DJ? What was your journey?
Quick sidebar. I have to say that Jonathan directed me. I was going to say,
yeah, you win the prize for having known the longest of all of you guys.
Right after you graduated, right?
Yes.
Right after you graduated, so he was very young, and I was in college, so we weren't that far apart in age. But he directed me in Pippin. I was the tall Ziggy Stardust leading player in Pippin, and he was our director.
Yeah. It's Cindy Purchase Performing Arts Center, which was a big theater arts college.
Yeah, it was a great time. But prior to that, I was going to be a veterinarian. I went to a pre-med program. Yes, went to a pre-med.
That I didn't know.
Went to a pre-med program at Washington University in St. Louis, which is kind of an egghead pre-med, pre-law. That's what they're known for in St. Louis. And there I took acting and dance. I started dance very late. I took one dance class a week as a junior in high school and continued as a senior, but thought, well, I'm just going to be a veterinarian. But it was in that first year at Washington University that my acting teacher said, you might think about this instead. And so I said, well, okay. And I literally sent in pictures to Harkness House of Ballet, and with pictures,
Wow.
only pictures, got a scholarship for the summer.
Wow.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I have a good line. A good line.
Well, and it's usually the other way around, that somebody will, if it's a tribute to your talent, because a lot of people would have been told by their arts teachers, you might think about something else, and it happened in the reverse for you.
It happened in the reverse. So then I went to City Purchase for a semester, did Pippin with Jonathan, had a great time, and found out that they didn't then, I'm not sure if they do now, they didn't have an actual musical theater BFA.
Right.
Yeah, it was all separate. It was conservatory style. So there was the acting company and the musicians and the dancers. The dance program is astounding. But I said, I think musical theater is where I'm going to go, not into pure dance. And so I ended up back in my home state of Kentucky and got my BFA. And it was there that because it was a small program, it's interesting about small programs. There are lots of opportunities that may not show up in larger programs because you kind of design it yourself, right? So not only did I start choreographing, but my junior year, I got credit for writing a show. My senior year, my theater company, the theater department, decided to produce that show as one of their main stage vehicles or productions. Oh. And so I directed that. So it was choreographing for the dance company at the university, and then directing. It's like, oh, this is what I think I will do. But while I'm still viable as a performer, I'll make my living that way and learn. So that was the path.
Well, you're all of you do something that I think is absolutely necessary for survival, and it has propelled you into another stratosphere, and that is generate your own work, create your own work, either write it or produce it or just mastermind the entire thing. And that's to be envied. I have tried, and very rarely have I gotten a project off the drawing board. But this is probably the biggest thing that I've actually instigated. And it was with Tony's help. So did you know very early on, Jamie, that you needed to do that, or that you wanted to do that?
I did. I was always the rainmaker for my group of friends. I would try to create work for people. Even I went to a version of professional children's school. I went to Lincoln Square Academy, and in it was a bunch of professional kids. Robbie Benson, Julie Budd, Chris Norris, those people, my friends. And we would do, stuff at school. And I was always trying to put together shows for us to do. I was always putting on shows in the lunchroom. There was a wonderful woman. Her name was Mrs. Hillier to me. But she was a vaudevillian, and she must have caught on that I was this crazy rainmaker, and she came to me and said, she's the mother of Gwen Hillier, who was in No No Nanette at that time. And she said to me, I'm going to show you how to produce shows. And so we put on shows in the lunchroom with all these people. And from that moment on, I was I did this when I was 16 in New York, Henry Sweet Henry, a revival of the show, in a building that collapsed to the ground. I was in the Mercer Arts Center when it collapsed to the ground.
Oh my gosh!
And the Lambs Club, which was the Lambs Club, the actual organization, they made we were playing at the Mercer Arts Center, which had 7 theaters in it. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was playing, Tub Strip was playing, El Grande de Coca-Cola was playing, and our show. And collapsed to the ground. And the Lambs made this challenge, because I was 16 at the time. And they said, if that kid can get his show up here, we'll let you use the theater, which has been a Broadway theater. And I would not leave the site of the building that had collapsed until I got my set and costumes out of there. And we moved that show uptown, and we did it for 3 weeks in the Lambs Club. And that, I mean, I've always been a rainmaker since then.
It's amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
I've closed many a theater, but I've never collapsed one. You me on that. You know, you have this amazing. We said this in the pre-show, but this bragging wall of all your posters back there. I feel like I'm in Schubert Alley. And Jonathan, I would be remiss if we didn't tell our audience that your apartment, which was how many, 3, 4 flights above mine. I don't know how you got all that stuff up in a walk up, but it's an amazingly decorated apartment, a small space, but just incredible. And you had a feature article done on your apartment in the New York Times. How did that come about?
I was rehearsing a show at HB Studios, and something got messed up with the studio schedule, and I had no studio to go to. And I said, well, why don't we go up to my apartment? You know, I got a studio. We'll go up to my apartment and rehearse. One of the actors was an architect who had just had his home featured in the New York Times. And the minute he walked in, he said, oh my God, Connie Rosenblum of the New York Times must see this apartment. I was like, yeah, okay, good. Let's get to work. 9 months later, I got a call from this woman saying, we hear you have a wonderful space. I feature how artists live in New York and make a living. So they had to do fact checking. They had to do a criminal background. You know, I'm clean, you know, just so you know. And the minute this woman walks into my apartment, she goes, do you know how many people asked me to feature their apartment? I said, you're the New York Times. I'm sure you get a lot. She goes, I'm so glad I did this. She scoured my apartment, literally every single inch of it. And after about 3 hours, I was like, okay, I think we can wrap this up now. And she said, we're going to have photographers here. We're going to send photographers. I was like, okay, no problem. Knock, knock, knock. I opened the door, and there is this crew of lights. And I said, do you guys understand how big my apartment is? I don't know. Go. So they came in and they photographed it. That article was then picked up by the New York Times. They print a book every year of their most popular articles. And that article was picked up as one of the most popular articles in that particular year. And she said to me, you'll read the unedited version of the article. And I said, what do you mean unedited version? I said, what, you know, and you guys know about the New York Times, you get the top half of the fold or the bottom half. This article was on the top half of the paper. So it was right there. Wow. And she goes, yeah, our editors edited it down, but in the book, it's the full article. And so it was lovely to see that. And I have the book, actually. We did a couple of book tours and, you know, book speaking engagements on this. So yeah, that was that. Yeah. But 35 years, I'm not going to tell you what I pay in this apartment. They're going to take me out in a pine box. It's been my home for that many years. So I'm grateful. And I'm able to do my work because my overhead is so low. So, you know, it's all that and more.
Well, that's exciting. And DJ, are you not in New York anymore?
So where are you, darling?
I am in lovely Orlando, Florida. So it's a bright sunny day. It's 90 degrees here.
We all have our New York dark backgrounds going on. And
did you move to Orlando, or you?
I did. You know, after 30 years. Yeah, after 30 years, I thought, well, I'm doing mostly regional theater work, and I can always fly up for auditions, and I fly to wherever I'm going to work anyway. And I thought, let's try something else. I'm single, so let's go somewhere else and see what the pool is like there for dating. And it's been lovely. You know, it's been lovely. The first year I wasn't here much because I was working so frequently. It's changed, as you might guess, this year.
Well, everything's changed, but it will change again. I mean, we're looking at New York as so many of our friends are either temporarily moved out, so you got the jump on it. But I think when things bounce back, people are going to get their rents a lot cheaper, and they'll have their choice of apartments. But I know Jonathan's holding on to his, and we own ours. So I and Jamie, I don't think if it would take you about 3 years to move all those posters. So I think that
I'm actually not in New York, but I lost my apartment a couple of years ago. I have been working at the Ordway, and I got a call from my super, and he said, "They know you don't live here, and they fired me yesterday." And I had lived in my apartment. I was like Jonathan. I think David, you've all been at my apartment.
Yeah, been there.
I was like Jonathan. I had a great apartment that I lived in for over 30 years. Yeah. And it was my home, but I moved to St. Paul. I have a great apartment. I have a great condo, and I like DJ. It's like at this point, none of us really. You can live anywhere and do what we do. So.
Yeah, it's beginning to be like that, and there's certainly a lot of theater in Florida. I would have been there now were it not for this, but that's another story. But
trivia, I'll go into trivia that Orlando is, I think, the 4th largest talent pool in the country.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I did a play in South Florida last year and got to know a lot of the local actors, and the interesting thing is they have a whole different set of rules there in terms of right to work, and even when they do filming, for background actors, they don't pay as much as they do in New York, which I thought was kind of astounding. So I told them all to get on the stick and get their salaries up down there because they deserve it. We had 2 Florida people last week, and it was great to have their perspective. So I didn't know we were going to have another one, an expat this year. Well, this week, Jamie, you mentioned the Ordway. What a wonderful place to work. How long were you there?
I was there over 12 years. I came here to help revitalize their theatrical programming and create a producing arm. And it was a real challenge, and it was exciting, and we got to do some wonderful things. And I learned a lot about community service that was very important to me. Really, the community here is incredibly rich with artists, and to create work for that community was really a blessing for me. It was my pleasure.
I did a little night music there. Right before you went in, I guess, or maybe considerably before.
I think a few years before I was there, but yeah, they had a history of on and off producing, and unfortunately still do. They're primarily a presenting house, but for a huge arc of it, we were able to produce some really good work. So, and I'm so glad you were there because it's a beautiful space.
It was. I loved every minute of it. We were in the smaller space, the McKnight Theater.
Right. And we were there.
I think we were there for 13 weeks, and it was a lovely production that Worth Gardner directed. And they were planning a Broadway revival at the time. This is pre the Catherine Zeta-Jones and Angela Lansbury production. It was supposed to star Glenn Close.
Wow.
We got amazing reviews and a lot of coverage. And one by one, they flew every one of the principals out to New York to audition for this production, except the 2 leads, of which I was one of them. So they said they were going to cast this with a name star. But I did get a lovely note from Mr. Sondheim saying I would be considered for the understudy. And we all know what happened to that revival. Nothing happened to that revival. So I'm still waiting. But it was my favorite production of that show, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
It's such a beautiful show, and I bet you were great in it.
It's my favorite role, and I've said it before. It's because there's so much meat to it, Frederick Eggerman, and yet you can still make people laugh.
Yeah,
and sing pretty and put on beautiful costumes. You don't have to dye. You don't have to do drag or put on armor or anything like that. And you get the beautiful leading lady in the end. So it was what's not to love.
That's an interesting little night music, because I've choreographed it, not directed it. David Saint directed the production. I choreographed, but years later, fast forward, I'm with Pat, and she goes, "Well, the Lieber Singers was my idea," and I was like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, we had a chorus, and we didn't really know what to do with them." And Pat was like, "Well, I want them to waltz." So every time the Lieber Singers appear, they're always in a waltz tempo. And that was Pat who did that, if I'm not mistaken about the way that that's constructed through the show. And she talks very fondly about Weekend in the Country and how one night, big, huge round of applause. The next night, no applause. Next night, no applause. And Hal turns to Pat and goes, what's going on? And she goes, "Well, we got to hold the curtain for another 2 beats. And literally, that was the problem, was that the cueing of that particular act curtain was kind of interesting. So that being said,
it needed a moment for the audience to take it in, to take in what had just happened.
Exactly. The curtain wasn't coming in correctly. So that was the issue with that. But anyway, so it is what it is.
Well, I remember a performance that we had someone doing sign language for the show. And,
oh, how beautiful.
And to do that for a weekend in the country, while 18 people are all singing different lines at once. And every actor on the stage was sort of peering over to the side to see what, because we thought this poor person is going to have a meltdown any second. It was probably the worst performance that we ever gave of that, because it was just too delicious to miss. So, yeah. Well,
that theater is no longer at the Ordway, by the way, David. One of the things that changed at the Ordway is that theater was demolished and they actually built a bigger state-of-the-art concert hall.
Really? And I thought it was so new and modern then, I guess.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful space. And the Ordway needed something else for what it does. They really needed a home for the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, and that is actually what happened. That theater is gone now, and there's an incredibly beautiful, pristine concert hall that is for the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. And again, it's what the community needs. That's what all of these that's the thing about working in the regions. Coming from New York, you had no idea, or I had no idea when I was growing up, that each of the regions around the country have these beautiful performing arts centers that really are there for the community, for what that community needs. But I'll get off my political thing now.
No, that's politics is rare on this forum, but
it's interesting.
It's nice that it's politics that hasn't to do with the White
House. Driving theater, instead of begging that they remember that they need to please care. We need the CARE Act to happen.
Well, I do remember when I was there, you were there was an election for governor going on, and the 2 main candidates. One was Humphrey's son, was it? Or I've forgotten now. It's been a long time, decades now. But the dark horse was a third-party candidate named Jesse Ventura, that nobody gave a shot in hell of winning. And I remember I was in the little park right across from the theater one night, and he was there talking to one of his campaign people. And I thought, well, I actually saw the guy, and he was doing commercials with where he was naked, doing the thinker, the famous Rodin statue, and on a turntable. And I thought, this man hasn't got a snowball's chance in hell in winning this election. And we were doing a performance that night, and all of the local actors were just gobsmacked at what was happening. And he was the governor of Minnesota after that. So I guess I was there when history was made, but you obviously changed the whole direction of the theater. Were there? I think there were shows that you originated there that moved on to Broadway. Am I?
It was all kinds of things have come out of the Ordway. It's an amazing, fertile. Minnesota is an incredibly fertile artistic place. My friend Jack Ruler, who founded Mixed Blood Theater, says it starts in Minnesota and it then moves out to the rest of the world. I mean, Prince was the only one who realized the revolution would start here. So, it's the truth. We're sort of in the center of it. It's crazy.
So, DJ, we've talked a little bit about The Man Who Would Be King, but you are writing a bunch of things always. Whenever I see you, you're developing. I find writing very lonely. I can't do it. I obviously have the gift of gab, but I cross out every 2 sentences and never get anywhere because. But you obviously don't have that problem.
Well, they say writing is rewriting. And when it comes to musical theater, it isn't so very lonely because it's more often than not is some form of collaboration with composers, lyricists. There's going to be some collaboration involved. So I don't think it's as lonely as some forms of writing. But just a little moment of Prince. Ready? Dun, dun, dun. So that's my
wow.
I just thought he needed to make a cameo since you mentioned him, Jamie.
What is that doing there, DJ?
It's a sculpture that I made. Ready? Talk about rainmaking. I went to what's called the Love Burn in Miami at the top of this past year before everything got shut down. And the Love Burn is a branch of Burning Man.
Okay.
But it happens in Miami. So I did, because I wanted to create something, I wrote a version of The Happy Prince by Wild using Prince songs as the score. And it was just, after Burning Man, you do it outside for anybody that wants to come. And, it was a way to keep myself active between gigs. So that's why I made the Prince sculpture. But yeah, so back to writing. Lonely, I tell you, the most challenging part typically is deciding what to work on. I've got lots of ideas, because then I think I begin to look at who do I enroll to be in this process with me. And then there's that process of enrolling people to support. Jamie, you did Man Dance, which we worked on. And these ideas, it really isn't lonely because it's all about enrolling other people in the vision so that it can move forward.
So what is this Man Dance? What would tell them?
I should have sent that. I didn't even think of that, DJ.
Well, that's the only show we've worked on together. We did Wizard of Oz, but that was your project that I worked on.
That's true. We keep trying to find something to do together. We choreographed a small piece together.
Yes.
I don't know, for a minute, we're all the same, all of us here. Yeah. You just have to keep creating things.
Spaghetti against the wall, baby.
It's interesting when you ask,
Go, please, John.
I was going to say, it was interesting. Did you always know that you had to create your own work? And I actually didn't until. Do you guys remember Fifi Oscard, the agent?
Yeah.
When Fifi Oscard said to me, "Here's what I'm going to tell you: don't wait for the phone to ring. Create your own work." And so it was at that sort of epiphanous moment that I was like, maybe there's some truth to that. So it is true, like you, DJ. If you could see the notebooks that I have up here, of all the different projects that I pull forward, and you put a little spice on it, and you mix it up, and then you slide that one back, and you pull the next one out, and so that's part of the creative soul and the journey that we are all bound to, until you're not bound to it. And for me, writers, I live for writers, because you all start with a blank piece of paper and an idea. And I look at that and go, God bless you, because I don't have that. Act 1, scene 1, curtain rises, maid walks in, done. But writers are the gods of the room, plus the producer. As I will quote my mentor Pat, she goes, "We are guns for hire as directors, and it's our job to interpret that which the writer puts on paper." So, Jamie, I'm working with Christine Toy Johnson right now, who you know very well, on a script that we're doing for this benefit that I'm very excited about. But I said, Christine, so you understand, I don't change a comma unless you approve the comma is changed. Wow. And she was like, "Oh wow, that's." I said, for me, writers are to be beholden, and they are very important in that room, and they have to be in the room, and they're there for, oh my God, we can't do our job without them. So
yeah, it's true. That's why I'm in awe as well. There's nothing scarier than that blank page, and I feel like I'm good as a shaper, and I can feedback, but to begin where there is nothing, that's
I can't do it
beyond my ken.
I love to create the box. I love to create the big picture.
Yeah.
And then I like to think that all of the collaborators knit the doilies that go into the box.
I love that.
And, and sometimes I am the person with the pen writing it. And sometimes I'm the person that's just got the idea that, like, it needs to be a show that involves, I don't know, 4 guys that are really, really creative and that can't stop themselves from twirling around, which would be the 4 of us. So
it's interesting though too when you talk about playwrights. What I do feel I'm comfortable in is dramaturgically working with that playwright to say I go back to my Hal Prince mode. What if during that song a rock flies through the window? How is that going to change the stakes of the game here? And the writer looks at, well, let's look at that. What if, but I dramaturgically feel stronger there to work the drama, which dramaturge means in Latin. It's some, turge meaning to work drama. And so that I'm more comfortable in, but to write a play, oh my God, never. No, not going to happen.
Well, you did a very unique take on a classic musical a few seasons ago with the musicals tonight. And it was amazing to me, first of all, because I've worked with that company a couple of times, and
that's right.
Very rarely did Mel or anybody say, well, let's turn this completely on its ear. It was basically, they would go back to cut songs and things that were
that
missing.
Didn't happen.
But to do something, you did an all-male voice
version of Voice from Syracuse. And may she rest in peace, Joy Abbott was a very, very close friend of mine. And I was like, God, I don't know about this piece. I'm just not sure. But George Abbott wrote a stage direction that gave the whole thing away. He said, a guard does a vaudeville walk-off. And I was like, oh, this is a vaudeville. This is a vaudeville. So I went back to Joy Abbott and I called her and I said, what do you think if we kind of, do a little nod towards the, Shakespearean Elizabethan theater where all men play the roles? And she goes, I love it. So I had an all-male cast that we had to get approved from, Rodgers and Hammerstein. But I was like, oh, I got Joy Abbott saying it's okay. So we did that. And it was a really successful interpretation of that. I loved it. I loved it so much. And we didn't change one note of that score. We kept all of that very pure. When we went into that world, it was Rodgers and Hart, and it was beautiful in that regard. And we dedicated it to Lorenz Hart. It's a very interesting piece that he wrote. If you listen to his lyrics in there, he was struggling with his sexual identity throughout his lifetime. And if you listen to those lyrics, you hear a man who is just struggling with understanding what his type of love is. Falling in love is not falling in love at all. I mean, it's really fascinating. And we did a benefit for Broadway Cares to raise some money for with Lorenz Hart in mind. So yeah, it was a great. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
No, I think it's what you speak of with Hart's lyrics in that show. It's full of layered references that if you get the inside joke too, you can you can keep your Athens, you can keep your Rome. There's I'm a hometown, and all of that.
Oh, big time!
you can interpret.
With
gay sensibility.
And you know who did that role for me is Josh Walden, who I adore. And And everybody just landed in that play at the same time. It was great. I had the entire room covered in references of all the great comedians that ever walked the earth, from Charlie Chaplin to Buster Keaton, the Commedia. It was really, really quite a lovely experience. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
I don't know why, because I think I went in for it, but I didn't end up seeing it. But your runs were not very long, and that's the.
We just miss it, Jonathan. I had heard just wonderful ththings about it.
Oh, thank you, Jamie.
And we usually get to see a good voice from Syracuse. So.
Well, when I sent Joy the notice, so because she asked me to send this to her, and she says Roundabout tried it, Encore's tried it, and no one has succeeded the way that you have succeeded with the critical response from this. And I was like, I just was appreciative of it.
Yeah.
And like I said, everybody was on board. Even when I pitched it to the producer, Mel, I said, Mel, I don't know if you're subscribers. And he goes, let's try it. So I love when a producer has that sensibility as opposed to saying, no, we want to,
Well, I'm trying to get Mel on here and talk about some of these things. I've known for so long.
A gentleman of the theater, Mel.
Well, he loves musicals, and he's given so many of us opportunities to do roles that we never would have. I got to do Aurora the Grease Paint for them, and but the funny thing, Mel said, I would love to be on the show, but I don't have a camera on my computer. And I said, well, we could do just voice, but I think we'd be missing you. So there seems to be a faction of people. Mel, if you're listening, we're still working on getting you a camera for your computer, because we're going to have a Musicals Tonight reunion somehow.
That's great. Yeah, that was an important series that he ran. You all remember the old Equity Library Theater. Well, I closed the doors to ELT. I did the very last show. So
did you do Gigi there?
I did Gigi with Bob Cuccioli, yes, who I love to this day. But no, I then was asked back to choreograph Wonderful Town for them, and that was the last show that I remember closing those doors, saying, "This shouldn't have happened."
Yeah.
So remember that day that I was like, this should not have happened.
It's a church now, right?
Well,
I don't.
I went by there once. They did do an independent off-Broadway production in that space, maybe 10, 12 years ago, of Chess.
I know.
There's a lot of history in that neighborhood. The Gershwins lived across the street at one point, Yeah, it's a shame. It really.
I actually went back to Equity to ask if they would want to open up this again, and I actually was able to go down to NYU, where all the archives of Equity Library Theater are stored.
Wow.
And I was able to go through some of these archives. Anybody who was anybody walked through those doors. That's just as plain as it gets. And when that closed, there was no other platform for young directors and choreographers and actors to showcase their talent. So when Mel came along with Musicals Tonight, that was that opportunity, and it was just wonderful. So we need more of those kind of producers.
We do. But I just got passed a note. I think there's someone. Don Farrell wants to send his love to you, DJ Salisbury.
Hey,
Don was on the show a few weeks ago. I worked with him on several shows with Worth Gardner, but I didn't realize, talk about somebody who has created theater and they created their own work the way you have. He founded the Actors Theater of Indiana. So I think
lovely organization.
And I hope he brings us all out there to work for him when he's back. They're plowing through, as so many theaters are right now. I know we're all very upset that we know that Broadway won't officially be back for quite some time yet, and that's a huge blow. But what I am seeing, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but there are a lot of other theater venues that are finding some way to do it either virtually or with with one-person shows. It doesn't employ a lot of us, but it's a start. I think we've gotten to that plateau where we're going, enough. We have to move forward. We have to find a way, because we have to keep the lights on in more ways than one. But I do want to ask you all about things that are upcoming, because I know that there are some things out there. We're getting towards our little intermission feature here, which I'll tell you about what we're going to listen to. But we do a quiz question. And this one's a little complicated this week. I'm sure you guys all will have input on this one. But let's pose the question and see whether we get any feedback from our audience. We have one lady who gets it right almost every week, so I'm still trying to think her. This is a multi-part question. Now, a lot of Broadway musicals have revivals, but can you name Broadway musicals that have had sequels? And actually, there are more than you might think. So while we ponder that question, and no Googling, please. While we ponder that question, we have a clip from the show that I was talking about with DJ, the Man Who Would Be King, sung by our mutual friend, David Pitzinger.
Oh, wow.
So it's some beautiful writing and a beautiful voice. And if you want to stay glued to your computer and just listen to it, you certainly may. You can also turn up the volume and fill up your glass, because it's just audio this week. But here is a song from The Man Who Would Be King, sung by David Pitzinger. And it's a project that is near and dear to the heart of DJ Salisbury, one of the creators. Let's listen to that.
No more a god than any man. Still, they need to see me so. Will my reign as king of Kafiristan be something other than a charlatan's show? The choice before me, a path unknown, or one I've marched along for years, collecting scars as souvenirs, carved in bone. Will it have mattered when all is through? I was no kind of royalty, yet left behind a legacy, good and true. All that one man can do after feeling his heart expand is touch another hand and pray that he'll be wise. At last I'm realizing all one man can do. Great the chance I could achieve if I stop pretending and I start believing. All that one man can do has no measure in yesterday. The final game begun. In giving I'll have won. Tomorrow dawn.
Lovely.
Lovely.
I wonder if David is listening.
So,
We were in touch a few weeks ago, so
I mean, a voice teacher said to me recently, she has a lot of baritone students, and she said, "Where are the baritone songs?" And like David Pittsinger and that basso, so beautiful.
well, I say to a lot of young people, because when I was a kid, when we were kids, Jamie, and looking at I wasn't looking to go into, I wasn't going to be a rock star, but I wanted to be, Richard Kiley or Alfred Drake or and by the time I got to a certain age, the rules had changed and the tastes had changed. Everybody was a baritone. Everybody was singing like Colm Wilkinson or Mandy Patinkin, and there were times I would go in for a role, and I try to lighten up. I try to, and you slowly realize you can't bend yourself into a pretzel. You have to be who you are, and what's lovely about that realization is there were plenty of wonderful roles for me in musicals that I had grown up listening to. And I was lucky enough to go and play them, the La Manchas, the La Cages, the Little Night Music, Camelot, and so you find your niche. Doesn't mean we all don't want to grow and expand, but you can't see into the future. We certainly wouldn't have predicted where we all are at this moment if we could. And you have to roll with the punches, and then be true to yourself. And I think you guys are certainly understanding of that. You've all done that, and are doing that. But so before I get on another tangent here, did we get any answers of the sequels to Broadway musicals? Yes.
Oh, very good.
Best Little Whorehouse was Best Little Whorehouse Goes Public.
That's right.
Yes.
And that ran about 2 hours.
Yes.
And yes, Phantom of the Opera, Love Never Dies, although it never came. It
didn't come to New York.
It's not so far had not had a life in New York, but doesn't mean he didn't have a sequel. Were there any others? Because
I do.
I have one.
Yes, I have one.
That's right. That's the only one that was probably a hit. Let 'Em Eat Cake was the sequel to that. Yes. So let's let DJ answer. His hand went up right away.
Well, because the first show that had me become aware of musical theater was Annie. So Annie then had the sequel off-Broadway, Annie Warbucks.
And in between, it was Annie 2. So it probably had more iterations than... and anybody else can think of any. Was that what you were thinking of, Jonathan?
No, but I did know Annie had a sequel, yes. The one that immediately came to mind was Bring Back Birdie, which was Bye Bye Birdie's sequel, with Cheetah, I think. Didn't Cheetah do it?
Yep. And I think that did last one night. That show was never really, they wrote it as something that stock and amateur companies could do because Bye Bye Birdie was so popular. And it kind of got away with them. And even Adams and Strauss said, well, it's not really that good. But if you want to produce it on Broadway, and it lasted, I think, one night. But
Joe Layton directed it. And
Sheila was in it again, and Donald O'Connor and Maria Carnilova.
Yes. So that was the one I thought of.
Did you have one?
Yeah, there's a sequel to The Boyfriend called.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's the hardest one.
What's that sequel called, Jamie?
It's called Divorce Me, Darling.
That's right.
It's the same characters in the 30s.
Same characters. I
more mature.
I've done it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
I love
you're
I
the
love
only
the
person I
boyfriend.
know that has done it. So that's you're
You know,
the envy.
did you know? You must have all known Frank Young, who
Oh,
ran
sure.
Theater of the Stars in
Theater of the Stars.
Texas, and he did a production that did The Boyfriend as Act 1 and Divorce Me Darling as Act 2,
Fun.
and it was choreographed by Susan Stroman, and I was actually in it.
Wow.
And it was I remember at midnight, people would be walking up the aisles like this, watching as they were leaving. We were still doing The Boyfriend.
Oh yeah.
The Boyfriend is a 3-act musical. We did it in 1 act.
I was going to say, how did you do that? That's a 3-act musical.
It was a very long evening.
Well, I suppose you could say that also falsettos.
Yes,
You know, but of course that was off Broadway, and then it was incorporated into one show. So
Right.
But Divorce Me, Darling was the one that
Good one.
Tony reminded me of, and I was embarrassed that I didn't think of it first. So the only one I've done was VI Sing, and I did a great production of that in Florida some years back, but played John P. Wintergreen. So now we get to the portion. I know that Jonathan, I want you to go first because you've got something going on that's very timely right now, a benefit.
It's been a labor of love. So I did the very first big show I did as a dancer was Cats, and I had done the national of that with Christine Toy Johnson, and I remember sitting in my hotel room. We were on the road, and I remember the news came on that Michael Bennett had just passed away from the HIV/AIDS virus, and something hit me. And I went back into that theater. We were like 9 months on the road already out of the 2 years that I did the show. And I said, guys, I don't know about you, but I just can't sit around. We have to do something. Long story short, we created a real Judy and Mickey, let's put on a show, a tribute to Michael Bennett called A Singular Sensation. This was 3 years before Broadway Cares was even an organization or a foundation. And we went and raised money for the Kansas City Good Samaritan Project. And I remember Tyler Gatchell-Neufeld, Tyler Gatchell, and they were our GMs. And Nina Lannon, she came down to see us in Kansas City do this show, and she says, you guys have something here. Normally, we wouldn't want you to do anything outside of the confines of your contract, and as long as it doesn't interfere with your contract, we really would like you to continue doing this. So we went across the country doing these one-off benefits. We got so fancy that we actually, when we were in Washington, we commandeered Lily Tomlin to host one of the evenings. Over the course of those months, we raised something like $80,000 in various locations. Flash forward, and I get a phone call from one of my comrades in that show, and he says, do you remember when we did the Michael Bennett? I said, yes. And he goes, well, what do you think? And I said, yes. And he goes, I haven't even asked the question. I said, whatever you're going to ask me, the answer is yes. So long story short, we gathered over 30 members of that company back together again to celebrate this incredible landmark musical called Cats. We did something in a very special time, in a very special piece of musical theater. We've gotten folks back together and to do a benefit for Broadway Cares, which supports the Actors Fund. Quick note, because I knew you were going to ask about this. For those of you who are listening, the Actors Fund normally in any one given year gives out about $2 million. They have to date given out $16 million.
This year?
This year alone, in this pandemic period. We had postponed the presentation of this, the broadcast of it, and in talking with Stokes and these Broadway Cares and Tom Viola, I said, it's going to probably be more important that we do this later in the year than if we do it during the summer. And so we postponed this until October 23rd, which will be our first broadcast of 4 consecutive days. We have tributes to the opening number. We have testimonials of hope, which talks about how the Actors Fund has helped actors over the years. We have an incredibly stirring version of Memory, which brings it into a new contemporary light. Leslie Ellis performs that, who was our Grisabella, and she does an amazing job. Matt Zarley did the editing and directed it. And it was just, it turned out beautifully. And so we do a little special naming of cats. I thought it was great that we got the really useful group and thanks to Joanne Hunter for that, to give us their blessing. But when I said I'd like to do naming of cats, they said, oh, you have to go to the T.S. Eliot estate for that. And I was like, okay. The T.S. Eliot estate gave us permission to recite the naming of cats, which is all of it's owned by Universal Pictures, by the way. And so I was grateful that we got this, and it's part of this 30-minute program, which we're going to be broadcasting. I'm in final editing of that. It's, oh my God, editing. You guys know about editing. It's, wow. I've run out of memory on my computer, just so you know. But of course, it's an interesting format to be working in. I have to say, I've done film and television like we all have, but not being in the room with each other, that's the challenge here. And I miss not going to be able to go into the room and touch you, or just to hear you and to riff. These squares are okay for the time being, but I don't want to live here in this. And theater, as we all know, has lasted for centuries. Civilizations have come and gone, but the theater has always been there, and I have to live with that historic fact. So Thank you for asking about that. It's called With Love, Now and Forever, Cats for COVID Relief.
Well, that's very important that we said that. It brings to mind a project that was done this last week that Tony was on the production team for. Scobar Entertainment presented an Actors Fund benefit of the off-Broadway musical Jasper in Deadland.
Yes.
And it was completely done out of the generosity of these performers. And it was an amazing thing. I sat and watched it live, and it was remarkably glitch-free and full of creativity about how to use backgrounds. And for a moment you can forget that you were watching something that was virtual. And I'm proud to say Tony was a big part of doing that. So we're going to see more and more of this, but it's no substitute. I'm about to do one myself. Well, it's not myself at all. I got hired to play a part in a play that Lorraine Hansberry wrote called Les Blancs. And it's a revised version of this. Theater Emery is doing it. Theater Emery out of the Atlanta area. And I don't even remember how they found me, but I was delighted to be asked. And it's a very important play. And so I'm starting rehearsals for this on Tuesday night, which is, and it will all be this way. I've never had an equity meeting and a contract signing online, but that is what is going to happen. And so it's exciting. It's going to be fun. It's going to be nice to be working. And I don't know where this could lead, but as we've all found out, we don't say no to anything. We keep moving.
Exactly.
Forward.
David, I echo back to what Jamie mentioned earlier, and I took a note on it that, doing what we do, doing theater is one thing, but community service, I think is equally, if not more important at some points in time, no more so than it is now. So that is something that I'm,
Well, and it's so hard because we can't literally get out in the community.
Yeah.
We can't. Everything has to be virtual right now, and so I think we may be in a very enviable position when we do come back, because this will be the thing that people are craving more than anything else: is personal contact and to be in the room with other people. And it may not be all that long. We've endured this long. We can get through it. We were watching a movie the other night that I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but watching Schindler's List for the umpteenth time. And when we think about how difficult it is for all of us right now. The other people have endured a lot worse and survived through it. So when we see a story like that, I thought, oh, how depressing. Do I really want to watch this now? I'd rather watch Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. But actually what happens is that you get a catharsis and you get a strength to move on and inspired by other people's stories. Yeah. So what other stories are you working on, DJ?
If I may quickly say, Jonathan, I am such an admirer of you for having for decades been giving of your time again and again and again. Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS. Thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate that, DJ. Yeah, one thing that we haven't mentioned, which we all are connected by, is this incredible union called the Stage Directors and Choreographers Union, SDC, and we are all members of that. I know, and I'm grateful for that. But DJ and I commandeered the Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS.
Right word. That's the right word.
Yeah, we commandeered it from to do the flea market. Of course, we didn't do this year. But over the years, we've raised I think close to over $60,000 through SDC for Broadway Care. So DJ, thank you for that.
You are a champion. Quick attributions. Wendy Bobbitt-Cavett was playing the piano on that piece that he played with David Pitzinger, and the composer is the fabulous Neil Berg. So I just want to put that out there.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I should have mentioned that. I did his version of Prince and the Pauper many years ago. That was a very odd year. I did 2 versions of Prince and the Pauper written by 2 entirely different teams.
Wow.
And in both cases, I got a call from the director saying, I can't think of anybody else who could play Miles Hendon but you. And so I went in and did it both times. And when they went on to other productions, someone else played the part of Miles Hendon. So, but nonetheless, it was fun. And I think the most memorable thing about it was working with so many kids at one time. And the most confusing thing to my mind, and this is long before I hit my middle ages, and had to deal with memory issues, if you could blame it on that. But no, it was the fact that the prince in one was playing the pauper in the other one, and I was like, who are you?
That's awesome.
You know, I did an Oliver a couple of seasons ago where they double cast the kids, and I had one of rehearsal.
Oh dear.
And I got in this rehearsal, and I had to say, you know, who is speaking? Who are you? Who? And to top it off, they had a little girl playing Oliver at certain performances, and so it was a test of my patience and method, as well as my talent, and I do hope that I get to play that role again, but not under those circumstances.
That's funny.
So yes, it was an interesting experience. So Jamie, what are you pushing towards the future with?
It's been a really interesting time to develop work. So all of us, have been doing stuff online, and that's been fascinating. And to just sort of be able to breathe with it, as opposed to, oh God, I'm working on this new project and I'm fitting it in between another project. That's been incredible. For me, though, I've also had time to go back to singing, which is something that I have neglected for many years. And it was always my first love, as I said. I even have been taking singing lessons online. And I agreed to sing a concert in a couple of
Yes.
So I'm very excited about it. I haven't sung a solo concert in 20 years. So I guess we'll see what's going to happen. I certainly am not going to sing some of the notes that DJ and Jonathan have heard me sing before.
I was going to say,
mellow singer, But yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, as Marilyn May says now, get it in your key. That's the big, whatever age you're at and whatever time you're at in your life, make sure to sing in the right key. That's
Absolutely.
I still remember, Jamie, you and Superstar. You were amazing.
Well, thank you, DJ.
You were amazing.
Yeah, I was thinking. I'm sorry. I was going to say. I was thinking, Jamie. We did that show together. That rock and roll.
Sarah a couple of weeks ago on a similar thing like this, and I actually did this to him. Do you remember this? Blow out the candle. That was
my God. Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, it was a 1950s rock and roll show that we did. I was Lara's assistant, and then I actually went into the show later on. But it was with Jill Corey. Remember this lovely. Yeah, Jamie, your voice.
And trucks.
Boom.
Good.
Well, we're going to actually hear a little bit of it very soon. But I just got past the note. See how I'm bouncing around like a pinball machine here. But we didn't actually hear from you what you are working towards, DJ. What are you?
Yeah.
Some odd things. I've written a piece. It's an immersive theater piece with an original score by Andrew Gerla, genius, called Darkly. So we wrote it for live performance with multiple spaces. We had thought that it may be one of the first original score musicals with a very immersive. The audience is regarded as people in the play. Wow. So we were working on that, and then something happened called a pandemic. We've now 2020's word of the year is pivot. It's pivot.
Pivot, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
So we have been in talks to see about producing it in the virtual reality realm, where you actually will have, if you have the headsets. I have a 2-bit version here. These virtual
wow.
And it would be with live actors. So it would be a ticketed event where you are in real time with actors who are the characters in this. It's a speakeasy environment, and you are a patron of the speakeasy. So we're working on that. It's kind of fun, right? And I'm going to be starting 2 weeks because I wanted to do something. I kept thinking, in this world we're in with the Black Lives Matter movement, who am I as a 50-something-year-old gay man, in the theater? Where can I contribute? And so I found a company or an organization that's based here in Orlando called blacktheatergirlmagic.org. And they are, I think now the number is 1,700 women of color in the theater nationwide. Wow. Blacktheatergirlmagic.org. I mean, right? And I went to them and said, hey, I think I would like to contribute however I can, gratis, giving of myself. And so I'm going to teach an 8-week workshop, very bare bones, called Musical Theater Anatomy, to hopefully and to Black women exclusively, Black and Indigenous women exclusively, to hopefully say there is an avenue for women of color to be writers in the musical theater.
Wonderful.
So those are the couple of things that I'm up to.
Well, we've had a few in the past. Vinette Carroll and Mickey Grant, and we need more women and more people of color writing for musical theater. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad we didn't miss that.
Oh, thanks.
So,
Jamie, when is your concert? Jamie, when is your concert? And can we see it?
Can we see it?
Yes, on October 30th. And to tell you the truth, I don't know how to tell you to see it. I have paid no attention to that. I have not been wearing my producer or director hat. I've just been wearing my actor-singer hat.
I hear you.
Well, that's a true artist. I don't care if there's I just need to express myself. I can't do the business end of it.
It's at 5 o'clock. I know that.
5 o'clock?
That's wonderful, Jamie.
Eastern?
And it'll be on Facebook. I know that it'll be similar. It'll be streamed on Facebook.
Great.
From the Unity Church here in Minnesota.
Well, we should be taking notes where to Google it that way. The Unity Church, and I do usually at this point in the show tell everyone who's going to be on the show next week. But next week we're not going away. We're just going on hiatus for 3 weeks while I do this project, and then we have some very exciting people in the wings to come back with us. I love doing this show because I can meet with all my old friends and some new friends, and I don't feel quite as alone, and we hope that everybody who watches feels the same way. DJ takes a nice deep breath as you say that. It's true. I mean, we are creatures who need that kind of connection, not only in what we create, but as human beings, we need to do that. And I thank you guys for sharing your time and your talent and your love with everybody today. And I hope you got a chance to visit a little bit with
Oh my gosh.
There will be more.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. We have these wonderful platforms. We have Zoom and FaceTime and StreamYard is what we're using here. And now we're not so afraid of these platforms. I tell you, 8 months ago, I hated doing anything like this. And now I've gotten work doing it. So it won't disappear, but we'll get back to integrating it into our lives.
We are indeed building the plane as we are flying it, and so every day there's a new sort of part to the plane that gets put in, and it's like, oh, that seat feels fine for today, So, yeah.
Well, yeah. I please, our audience, please be on the lookout for all these projects that we've mentioned virtually. We want to raise money for the Actors Fund. We say that every year. We don't collect money here on Beyond the Green Room, but until they turn the lights out on us, we probably won't. But the important thing, I do encourage people almost every week to donate to the Actors Fund, because it helps everybody in our business. You'd be surprised. Opera singers, stagehands, everybody. So thank you guys so much. We will play off with a little clip of Jamie showing his vocal artistry, and it's a song that could be more appropriate for, if it's our lullaby to this forum for a few weeks, it's also our lullaby to Broadway. Thank you, Jamie Rocco, for singing us out, and I will see you in about 3 weeks. I think it's the 11th of November for the next installment of Beyond the Green Room. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for doing this, David.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Come on along and listen to the lullaby of Broadway, the hip hooray and ballyhoo, the lullaby of Broadway, the rumble of the subway train, the rattle of the taxi, the daffodils that entertain at Angelo's and Maxie's, when Broadway baby says goodnight. It's early in the morning. Manhattan babies don't sleep tight.